The transcendental object at the end of time, and I like that image because alchemists used to talk about what they called the scintilla, which is simply Latin for spark. So the transcendental object at the end of time sends off scintillas, sparks which are like reflections of its essence, but necessarily distorted. Well then, ranged all around this transcendental object and at greater and lesser distances are all the people who have ever lived. And if you are a Buddha, a Christ, a Muhammad, a Guru, somebody or other, and you are, what that means is that you have been struck by a scintilla of reflection from the transcendental object. And so you, as it were, have assimilated its essence into your being, and now you must act it out. And I would bet you that if you could step into the mind of a Christ on the road to Calvary or a Buddha preaching at Sarnath, what you would discover going on in the personal part of the mind is the question, why me? Why me? And the answer is, you just are dumb lucky, that's all. You know, you just happen to be standing in the right place at the right time, and there is nothing special about you. You just have a hit of the stuff. And then the other part of the question, the problem with all these religions, and it affects flying saucer cults, and it affects occult schools of magic, and everywhere, is people claim to know too much. They are not willing to live in the light of ignorance and in the absence of closure. So, you know, my God, you go to these UFO conferences, and, you know, you've got the people talking to the Pleiadians in booth 1. Next to them, people are talking to Commander Zamo of the Antares system. And then number 3, something else. No cognitive dissonance between these groups. They all have coffee together and are dating heavily, and it doesn't ever seem to enter anybody's mind that this is a little odd. In occult stuff, you know, you say, what's that? And they say, well, that's the 11th amethystine ray that was brought by the great white fathers of the 11th Lodge who came from the galactic center at the fall of Atlantis and established the... You say, how the hell do you know all this stuff? You know, I mean, nobody knows anything. And Christianity, the anticipation of the end of the world and the exegesis of revelations that has been worked out based on the visions of John of Athos, you know, it's a good try, but it's not a paint by number script for the unfolding of the world by any means. When the transcendental object at the end of time finally reveals its quintessence among us, all prophecies will be fulfilled. All religious ontologies will find themselves somehow vindicated and somehow humbled in the same moment, because they were, in fact, in Wordsworth's wonderful phrase, intimations of immortality. But you don't need to rely on these sanctioned intimations of immortality. You can have your own simply by taking 5 grams in silent darkness on an empty stomach after you've unplugged the phones on a Saturday night in your apartment. The real research into the nature of the eschaton is done one-on-one above 5 grams. Well, let's see here. I once heard you talk about an experiment your brother undertook where he was raving for 3 weeks, but you never explained what the experiment involved. What was it? Well, what a wonderful opportunity true hallucinations. I never talked about this, even often to very dear friends of mine. I mean, there are people who've known me for 20 years who I never told this story to because I think it takes as long to tell as it takes to read this book. You know that wonderful scene in Wells' Time Machine when he comes back to his gentleman's club and he says, "Gentlemen, this is no tale to be told over greasy plates." Well, similarly with this. So I didn't also want to make it the basis for my public career because this is real well, I almost said nutty stuff. I generally disbelieve in violations of physical law and miracles, but I did actually, in the course, I'm 46, I have seen 3 or 4 in my lifetime. And each time it's absolutely astonishing. Whole worlds of possible questions are instantly answered. And I wrote this book to inspire people to follow our method, which is our method is the rational but stoned mind in confrontation with the obscure. Seek ye the obscure. You know, if a book is not at least 100 years old, don't read it. If a country has more than one international airport, don't visit it. If a village has more than one outboard motor, don't stay. And just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, because out there at the edges are the edges. And that they're edges because nobody goes there, because the unsanctioned is hidden there. You know, that's where the shamans are, and the mad people, and the sexual experimentalists, and the aesthetic experimentalists. That really is the method, not belief. Belief is a toxic and dangerous attitude toward reality, I think. After all, if it's there, it doesn't require your belief. And if it's not there, why should you believe in it? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. By eliminating money and the separateness that it causes, could the world be saved by sharing the resources and the work and eliminating all the unnecessary waste of energy and needless competition and consumption? Well, I'm not sure how money could be eliminated. See, I'm a funny person. I vacillate between, I have a very strong impulse toward political action and save the world and round up the miscreants and set things right. That's part of my thing. But I also have this incredibly evolved sense that it's a done deal, that it's okay, that the main task is a certain alertness and attention to one's comrades, and that it will all unfold through the intercession of the transcendental object at the end of time. People say this is a contradiction. Fine, it's a contradiction. I mean, what are we doing here anyway? Is life supposed to be simple? But I preface that by saying, one time somebody in a group like this challenged me and said, "You're always talking about the peril of the planet and one thing and another. Why don't you ask the mushroom how to save the planet?" And so then I thought that was kind of a facetious and challenging thing to propose. But the next time I found myself capable of asking the question, I did. And the mushroom hesitated, and now I pass this on to you as pure fungal hearsay on the networks. I said to the mushroom, "So how can we save the world?" And it hesitated roughly a third of a second and said, "Every woman should bear only one natural child." I thought about this for a long time before I ever publicly mentioned it to anyone. And I realized, you see, I think that what is destroying us are two things.